Hello everyone, I'm Loren Culp, candidate for Washington State Governor. I'm speaking to you today because we must have a serious conversation about what our state's been through in the recent weeks and months, and equally important, the leadership crisis that we're facing. Together, we face a great challenge with the recent pandemic. Everyone has been impacted by it in one way or another. Some lost loved ones, and my heart goes out to those who did. Others just became sick and have recovered. Many more have had this virus without even knowing they had it, and they're just fine. That's a key point to keep in mind further along in my discussion. The bottom line, Washington was among the states hardest hit, and I appreciate and applaud the sacrifices that so many people have made. There's another crisis that our state's facing right now, and it's a crisis we have no choice but to deal with. It's a leadership crisis. Politicians like to talk about experience until they are blue in the face. Yet it's the foundational principles we draw from that will shape our policy decisions. If you take a road trip, having a GPS system or a map to guide you will make decisions down the road quite simple. If you make a wrong turn, listen to the corrected information is very key to staying on the right path. Ignore that information or stubbornly think you know better, and you will likely wind up lost. If you face a moral dilemma, being strongly rooted in faith makes decisions in your life much more simple to navigate. Without that moral compass, again, you get lost. If you're a leader of the state, like the governor is supposed to be, having the state constitution and the federal constitution firmly in hand makes the decisions you make regarding citizens and their rights much easier to make. Lose a grip on the Constitution, and your decisions become very lost. They say adversity is a true test of character, and it's true. Faced with this pandemic crisis, Governor Inslee showed us he lacks courage when he said, "I wish I didn't have this on my shoulders right now." He went on to prove that he has no compass, no foundation for decision making, no grip on the Constitution. When pushed to pony up with a plan, he said, "I wish I could tell you when that transition point will be." This is what a person without a GPS, a moral compass, or an understanding of the Constitution says. It's what a person without courage says. Washington does have a leadership crisis. By comparison, I would gladly take this on my shoulders right now. I have a moral compass. I have a firm grip on the Constitution, and both would significantly guide my decision making. This is very important because, as we know, decisions made by the governor can have a huge effect on our daily lives and businesses, either positively or negatively. Let's take a moment and talk about the basis for shutting down our economy. What was our goal when this all started? Why did we shut down? The answer to this question is really important because it's the only way to evaluate where we are today. It gives us the opportunity to ask the logical question. Does it make any sense that we are still shut down? So the goal was to get on top of the pandemic and to flatten the curve. Let me say that again. The goal was to flatten the curve, to take pressure off the hospitals and prevent them from being overwhelmed by COVID patients. There's a simple fact you need to know. The number of people getting infected doesn't change with a stay-at-home order. A shelter-in-place order only slows the rate at which people would get infected. That's an important distinction to understand. The goal was to save the medical system. We were fearful of losing our capacity to treat patients if our hospitals were overwhelmed, and fearful people almost always overreact. As of today, not only have we flattened the curve, but we also know that the fear of hospitals being overwhelmed never happened. Not even close. No hospitals are being overrun. Literally, 75% of the hospitals in the country have 60% of the patient load that they had before this pandemic. It's not just here in Washington. It's true everywhere. Even in New York, the area expected to be hit the hardest. The hospital ship that arrived to help has already left, unneeded. Now that we have data, the data is telling us that bludgeoning the entire population with a shutdown order ignores who we now know is at greater risk. Seniors 80 years or older with pre-existing conditions are at the greatest risk, followed by 60 to 79-year-olds, also with pre-existing health conditions. On the other end of the age spectrum, kids 0 to 19 years are at a very low risk. Based on the average age of teachers, they are also in a very low risk category. It makes no sense that our schools are closed. We're making an entire population of low or no risk people suffer for no scientific or safety related reasons. As governor, it's not my job to be a medical expert. Instead, I'd hold press conferences and put the experts up front and center. You'd hear unfiltered advice directly from the people who know. In Washington, that voice is being deliberately censored. We aren't hearing from medical experts at all. Interestingly, there's a penalty for medical experts who do share what they are seeing. In California, doctors Dan Erickson and Artan Masihi shared an absolutely compelling viewpoint that is quite different from anything political leaders are telling us. These are frontline doctors dealing directly with COVID-19 patients, sharing unfiltered data. These are the real statistics and real science. The response wasn't anything a reasonable person would expect. Instead of being encouraged by the reports, the media made every effort to discredit them. The question is, why? These two doctors shared their statistics, which showed a 0.030% chance of death with COVID. That statistic does not fit the narrative that the state should be shut down. Since Governor Inslee will not put the medical experts on the front line so we can hear directly from them, we're stuck with listening to him pretending to be an expert. The longer the existing strategy goes on, in the face of much improved data, the more clear it is that the governor's policies are not rationally connected to science, to safety, or current reality. Just recently, Glenn Morgan from the We the Governed interviewed a well-known constitutional attorney, Joel Ard. It was a fabulous interview with great content. I recommend that you see it. Joel Ard clearly lays out the difference between an ideologue, that is a policymaker, and an expert. An expert is someone who receives input and changes his or her opinion based on that input. That's what a smart, reasonable person does, a person who has common sense. A policymaker, however, rarely if ever changes their course of action based on new input. New facts, new data don't really matter. Inslee is demonstrating that he's following his own ideology, and that ideology isn't changing even after the data on COVID is now known. Here's why all of this is important. When the crisis started, decisions had to be based on projection and speculation. An overreaction could be argued to be right. However, now that more data is here and the input to the leadership has changed, why hasn't the policy changed? What has changed is the original goal of the shutdown. Remember, we were told to stay home so as not to overwhelm the medical system and our hospitals. And months later, we haven't felt a strain on the medical system. In fact, hospitals without their elective surgeries are laying people off and shutting down entire floors. Now, when I'm driving around, I see billboards that say, "Stay home, save lives." Governor Inslee's goal has shifted and it's impacting policy, and not in a good constitutional sound way. His reasons to perpetuate the shutdown just don't add up to reasonable people like you and me. Here's what I will do. First, I want to remind you of something I said earlier. Decisions made by government leaders which impact citizens' rights are much easier made when guided by a strong understanding and respect for the Constitution. That is my guide. You'll never have to guess what I do in a crisis because my actions are guided by the Constitution. Of all the responses by governors out there, I appreciate the leadership of the governor of South Dakota. She seems to have a clear understanding of citizens' rights and the role of a public servant, which a governor is. I would hold press conferences and bring the medical professionals in front of the people to share an unfiltered message for all of you to hear. Jay Inslee's not a medical professional. I'm not a medical professional. Each of you, the free citizens of this state, should be hearing the real data directly from professionals themselves because the data is changing by the day. Hearing their recommendations on what to do to keep you and your loved ones safe and make your own decisions based on what you understand are a risk for you, your family, and your business. Washington State needs to reopen. It needs to open now, without being spoon-fed our rights back. With consideration to safety, science, and our Constitution, Let me tell you what I'd do as governor. Number one, I would immediately bring an end to any actions not rationally rooted in public health and that violate our constitutionally protected rights. Number two, immediately reopen all retail shopping across the state with a suggestion to follow medical guidelines. This goes for every business. That needs to happen now. Number three, private sector construction projects need to reopen without restrictions immediately. If construction sites are safe for government contractors, then they're safe for private contractors as well. The virus doesn't know the difference. Number four, the process of applying for, approval, and receiving unemployment benefits must be streamlined and fast-tracked. Right now, it's taking days and weeks just to get someone on the phone, and weeks longer to even get any benefits. That's absolutely unacceptable. Jay Inslee knew what he was going to do when he shut this state down, that thousands of people were going to be applying for unemployment. Streamline the process and get these people relief now. Number five, reopen without restrictions our state's fishing and hunting immediately. Number six, reopen hospitals and medical facilities to allow them to perform medical procedures. Number seven, allow churches to return to full operation immediately with consideration of social distancing guidelines. Number eight, put political and financial pressure on county sheriffs and county supervisors to pass a resolution to tell the state they intend to safely reopen their counties in accordance with healthcare guidelines. Our citizens are tired of holding their breath, waiting for an undetermined amount of time while our state sits paralyzed by unreasonable rules and inconsistent executive orders. Good luck convincing anyone who wanted to go fishing or hunting that enjoying this outdoor activity would somehow make them more susceptible to COVID-19. Not a single other state in the nation took action to rob their citizens of this freedom. How do you justify closing private construction sites while having government-run construction projects still open? If it's safety you're really after, how does having the local pot store open keep you safe while closing the gun stores? Which, by the way, is the only store in the country with a constitutionally protected product. Clearly, there's no reasonable thinking here. I trust that necessary decisions to do what's right can be made in each situation for each individual, our citizens, the small business person, and the customers of those businesses. There's going to be another crisis. This pandemic, at a minimum, should be thought of as a dress rehearsal for the next crisis our state faces. Can we afford to allow the mishandling of this crisis to ever happen again? Can we afford to move forward with leadership that does not clearly understand nor respect the Constitution and citizens' rights? I don't think so. We've heard a lot about compassionate leadership. It's not compassionate to have a decision-making process that is not consistent with the Constitution. It is not compassionate to say big box stores should be open while our small businesses are shut down and going out of business. It is not compassionate when citizens have no clue what the next decision of leadership will be. Our lives and livelihood as members of the great state of Washington depend on our freedoms, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We can reshape our state into something to be proud of. We can make history, rise up from the past mistakes and poor leadership, and put a new face on Washington state government that stands for the people. Our citizens deserve their God-given freedoms to be honored and upheld to the highest degree. Businesses demand a future with a clear path forward, not with someone's hand on a switch ready to shut them down or open them up depending on the crisis of the day. The free market is a scary place as it is. I know that from experience. Add in someone with their finger on a switch who doesn't even have the experience of running their own business, makes for a bad business environment. This will cause many businesses to shut down or leave the state. And our citizens need those jobs, and we cannot afford this type of leadership going forward. Here's how citizens can make the difference. I can't take back this state alone. I need the help and support of all citizens. Please share this message with family and friends. And if you're able, contribute to my campaign and help us get the message out. You can go to culpforgovernor.com and do what you can to help there. I appreciate that. I'm Loren Culp, candidate for governor of Washington State. Please share this message. Thanks everyone for listening. God bless Washington State.